Right, hello again, just looking at this nice building here. Sorry, I just, hopefully going to be a little bit less slurry in this next video. Just had a nice cup of tea on top of my whiskey, etc, etc. So I've got a bit of caffeine in me now, so yeah, I suppose we'll go for it. The next thing I wanted to talk about was, oh sorry, I'll talk a bit slower. The next thing I wanted to talk about was, essentially I wanted to get on to a bit of a topic that you know I have a little bit of an understanding of because of the films I've watched, etc, etc, things like that, and some things I've seen on YouTube, things like that. I have a little understanding of it, but yet I have little understanding of it. So what I wanted to get into was I wanted to talk a little about trafficking, and not drug trafficking just yet, but a little bit about essentially human trafficking, which for some reason I'm awfully excited to talk about. Which I shouldn't be, but it's an extremely interesting topic. Now, what actually happens is if you look at this war that's going on with Russia at the moment across the Eastern Front, now it's all essentially the war with Russia is all across the Eastern Front, but it's mainly with Ukraine. Now, what actually happens is a lot of people, they're called what they call, I don't want to say war whores, but they're women of war who are then trafficked out. Sorry to say that, but they're women of war who are then trafficked out of that particular war, say with Ukraine and Russia. Now, you can tell I don't like the Russian government all that much. Partly because of what they've done to the United Kingdom, and partly because partly because of what they do to the Eastern, partly because of what they do to the Eastern Front. Now, what they actually do is they traffic women, say, and men. They traffic women and men outside of the Ukraine and the Eastern Front, say Romania, other places like that. What was the other place? I'd say they probably traffic them out of Hungary, for example. They've got a very right-wing government there. They're probably in coalition with the bastards. So essentially, what I'd say is nice women over there. So essentially, what I'd say is it's mainly out of the Ukraine. Now there was that whole war in what was it? Was it Bosnia or Bolivia? It was one of the two. Anyway, that happened outside of Croatia in the 90s, and there was all sorts of trafficking going on, all sorts of shit. So essentially, that's what happens. It's all across. I think it Bosnia or Bolivia. I can never remember which one. One of them is in South America. Anyway, bad geography. So anyway. Essentially, what I'm trying to get at here is that the Russian government essentially, and Putin, as in coalition with the Russian mafia in Great Britain, essentially traffic women out of the Ukraine, and they even bring them into the UK, for example, to be prostituted, etc, 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 etc. And they bring them into places like Sweden, for example. I saw a film on that once. It wasn't a very nice film, but I've seen a film on that once. They bring them into a place like Sweden, out of Romania, and then kind of get rid of their passports, do all that kind of stuff, and then essentially sell them on for profit as slaves. Now, as I know, as an ex-member of the hospitality and catering industry, I wouldn't say anything bad against, preferably against the food industry as a whole, but I would say against the hospitality industry is that the British hospitality industry is that a lot of, as I mentioned earlier on Facebook to all my friends, is that essentially a lot of people actually get trafficked through hotels and restaurants. Most people in the UK, for example, and outside the UK, what actually happens is they get trafficked outside and then they get trafficked through hotels and restaurants. And what I'd actually say is that considering that I've worked in the hospitality industry and I've worked for less than minimum wage, as a less than minimum wage, slave labourer, for example, is that a lot of people are essentially they're subconsciously trafficked. They don't actually realise that they haven't actually been trafficked, as in they've been put in the back of a van, all that kind of things, been taken away from their families and stuff. But what actually happens is I don't want to say this too brutally, but what actually happens is they're subconsciously trafficked into things like minimum wage labour, for example. And what I'd say is that it's completely wrong. So yeah, that's why I don't particularly like the privatisation of public corporations, public services, for example, particularly to the Russian government, as I've mentioned before. Now, that's about all I have to say on the topic. I'm very excited to have talked about that topic because I don't know why, but yeah, I'm just going to leave it there now. Goodbye.